Dahlia Johnson, a 17-year-old black girl washing dishes for $8 an hour at Murphy's Diner, lived a life shaped by quiet resilience and unspoken dreams. Every morning, her body woke at 5:30 a.m., without an alarm conditioned by routine. She slipped out of the narrow twin bed she'd slept in since she was 8, a gift from her mother before the accident that changed everything. The floorboards creaked as she tiptoed past her grandmother's room where Miss Ruby lay awake, but pretended to sleep, her wheezing breaths audible through the thin walls of their faded yellow house on Elm Street. The sagging porch steps, duct-taped windows, and peeling paint told a story of struggle, but Miss Ruby kept the place spotless, insisting that poverty didn't mean a lack of pride. Dahlia pulled on yesterday's jeans, checked her pocket for $3.47, enough for bus fare to work but not back, and prepared for the 3-mile walk home later. The journey to Murphy's took her through neighborhoods of stark contrast: manicured lawns with shiny cars, potholed apartment complexes where her friend Jada lived, and the abandoned shopping mall where kids smoked and dreamed of futures that rarely materialized. At the diner, Big Mike, the gruff but fair owner, nodded as she arrived, respecting her work ethic despite their minimal words. In the kitchen, Dahlia's calloused hands scrubbed plates in a rhythm stack wash, rinse, dry, while she gazed through a small window at the parking lot, watching families, workers, and suits move through lives she could only imagine. Her shift ended at 7:15 a.m., just in time for the real challenge, Roosevelt High School. A tired brick building with outdated computers and broken lockers. There, Dahlia transformed from dishwasher to straight-A student, tutoring peers during lunch. While eating peanut butter sandwiches and reading college brochures, Mrs. Patterson, her English teacher, slipped her. "You have a gift with words," Mrs. Patterson said, pushing scholarship applications her way. But college felt like a foreign word to Dahlia kids like her, got jobs, not degrees. Still, Mrs. Patterson's belief planted a seed, even if the numbers on those applications seemed impossible. After school, Dahlia returned to Murphy's for the evening shift, watching families celebrate couples date and elderly patrons linger to fend off loneliness. She noticed small acts of kindness, the woman counting change carefully, the businessman tipping generously on tough nights, and felt the diner's quiet magic. At home, Miss Ruby waited in her recliner oxygen tank, humming, her body frail from diabetes and arthritis, but her spirit unbreakable. "How was your day, baby?" she'd ask, and Dahlia would answer, "Good, Grandma," avoiding heavier truths, unpaid medical bills, skipped doctor visits, hidden college applications. They watched the news together, stories of distant successes and tragedies, a world apart from theirs. But tonight was different. For 3 days, Dahlia had saved every penny, no snacks, no sodas, walking both ways to afford a burger and fries, a rare moment of choice. As she reached for her tray, she noticed an elderly white couple at table 6, soaked from the November rain, hammering the diner's windows. The woman's silver hair dripped onto her expensive coat. Her husband's suit clung to him like wet paper. They'd ordered only coffee, nursing it for an hour, their movements growing frantic as they searched empty pockets. "I had it." "When we left," the woman whispered, dumping her purse, tissues, glasses. "No wallet." Sandy, the waitress, approached with the check, her face apologetic but firm. Big Mike's policy allowed no exceptions. The couple's dignity wavered as they stood to leave, facing the storm with nowhere to go. Dahlia's meal sat warm on the counter, the reward of her sacrifice. But seeing the woman's slumped shoulders, she made a choice. "Sandy, hold up," she called, crossing the diner with her tray. The couple turned, the man's piercing blue eyes locking onto her, calculating. "Folks, this one's on me tonight," Dahlia said, setting the burger and fries before them. Silence followed. The woman blinked back tears, and the man Harold studied her like she was a puzzle. "This is your meal," he said, voice steady. "I can work for another," Dahlia replied, waving Sandy over for fresh coffee and a call to Pete's garage for their car. "I'm Dahlia Johnson," she introduced herself, sliding into the booth. Harold and Margaret shook her hand, their grip surprisingly strong. They explained their Mercedes broke down on Route 47, their wallet misplaced, but Dahlia sensed something off their expensive clothes. The leather portfolio Margaret clutched, its gold logo vaguely familiar. As they ate, Dahlia shared her dreams. Business administration, maybe, to help her community. Harold asked about her neighborhood. His questions oddly formal, and Dahlia answered better computers for Roosevelt High, a local clinic revitalizing the abandoned mall. Margaret's portfolio shifted, revealing documents and blueprints. But before Dahlia could ask more, Pete's tow truck arrived. Harold transformed his posture, commanding, as he told Pete money is no object, despite claiming poverty moments ago. He slipped a napkin with Dahlia's name and address into his pocket, saying, "We don't forget kindness." As their Mercedes started effortlessly, Dahlia sat alone, sensing something extraordinary had happened. Unbeknownst to her, Harold and Margaret Whitmore, millionaires from the Whitmore Foundation, had staged the entire night testing her character. For 3 days, they'd watched her helping neighbors, tutoring for free, giving up bus fare for Miss Ruby's lunch. Harold was already on his phone, canceling meetings, ordering background checks, and telling his lawyer, "We found our candidate." Back at the diner, Sandy marveled, "I've never seen anything like that." Big Mike moved, brought Dahlia a new meal with apple pie, saying, "You earned this twice over." As she ate, Sandy whispered, "Something's off about them." Pete said their car started fine, like the battery was disconnected on purpose. At home, Miss Ruby listened to Dahlia's story with unusual intensity, murmuring about angels testing hearts. Lying in bed, Dahlia replayed the night Harold's eyes, Margaret's portfolio, the napkin treated like treasure. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jada. "Heard you gave your dinner to strangers. You'll be broke forever helping everybody." Dahlia smiled, feeling the night's weight. 3 blocks away in the Grand View Hotel, Harold and Margaret reviewed a folder with Dahlia's name, academic records, character references, proof of her selflessness. She didn't just pass. Harold said she exceeded every expectation. Tomorrow, they'd call Roosevelt High's principal, setting in motion a future Dahlia couldn't yet imagine. A scholarship, a community center, a legacy born from one act of kindness. The morning after Dahlia Johnson gave her hard-earned meal to an elderly couple at Murphy's Diner, the world felt subtly different, as if the air itself held a quiet anticipation. She woke at 5:30 a.m., her body clock unyielding, and tiptoed past Miss Ruby's room, where the faint hum of the oxygen tank mingled with her grandmother's soft snores. The Elm Street house, with its peeling paint and duct-taped windows, stood, as it always had, a testament to resilience over resources. Dahlia slipped into her worn jeans, checked her pocket for the same $3.47, still only enough for a one-way bus ride, and headed out into the pre-dawn chill. The walk to Murphy's Diner took her past the familiar markers of her town, the manicured lawns of wealthier neighborhoods, the potholed parking lot of Jada's apartment complex, and the abandoned Riverside Mall, its boarded-up storefronts whispering of forgotten dreams. At the diner, Big Mike was already prepping for the breakfast rush, his nod a silent acknowledgement of her reliability. Dahlia's hands fell into the rhythm of dishwashing, stack, scrub, rinse, dry, her calloused fingers moving with practiced ease as she gazed out the small window, watching early risers begin their day. But her mind was elsewhere, replaying last night's encounter with Harold and Margaret, the elderly couple whose desperation had seemed so real, yet left her with an unshakable sense that something bigger was at play. Their expensive clothes, The mysterious gold logo on Margaret's portfolio, Harold's piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through her, it all lingered like a puzzle she couldn't solve. At Roosevelt High, the morning unfolded like any other with its outdated computers and half-broken lockers, but Dahlia's focus wavered. During first period, Mrs. Patterson, her English teacher, pulled her aside, her expression a mix of curiosity and excitement. "Dahlia, I got a call this morning," she said, her voice low. "Someone asking about your grades, your character, your plans for college. They knew details, your GPA, your job at Murphy's, even how you carry Mrs. Carter's groceries home every Tuesday. They weren't just asking if you're a good student. They wanted to know if you're a good person." Dahlia's stomach tightened. "Who were they?" she asked, but Mrs. Patterson only shook her head. "They didn't say much, just that they're with a foundation. They'll be in touch with Principal Martinez today." The words hung heavy as Dahlia returned to her desk, her mind racing. At lunch, Jada slid into the library seat across from her phone in hand. "Yo, D, you gotta see this," she said, pulling up a news article. The headline read, "Whitmore Foundation conducts surprise community assessment." Dahlia's eyes scanned the text. A $200 million foundation, led by a reclusive CEO, was scouting locations for a major initiative. Her breath caught when she saw the foundation's logo, a gold emblem matching the one on Margaret's portfolio. "Jada, what does the CEO look like?" she asked, her voice unsteady. Jada shrugged. "Says he avoids publicity photos." "Why you so curious?" Before Dahlia could answer, the intercom crackled. "Dahlia Johnson, please report to the principal's office immediately." In 6 years at Roosevelt High, Dahlia had never been called to the principal's office. As she walked through the hallways, students whispered and teachers paused to watch her pass. Through the office's glass windows, she saw Principal Martinez speaking with 2 figures, an elderly white couple in impeccable clothing. Harold and Margaret, but not the rain-soaked, desperate travelers from last night. Harold's posture was commanding, his suit pristine. Margaret's designer coat gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Spread across the desk were documents bearing that same gold logo. Dahlia's legs felt unsteady as the secretary ushered her in. "Miss Johnson, they're waiting for you," she said. The moment Dahlia stepped into the office, the world tilted. Harold stood his presence, filling the room like a man accustomed to making million-dollar decisions. "Hello again, Dahlia," he said, his smile warm but sharp. "I'm Harold Whitmore, and you, young lady, bought dinner for one of the most influential philanthropists in the state." Dahlia gripped the back of a chair, her mouth dry. "You're Harold Whitmore," she managed. He nodded. "And last night you showed us exactly who you are." Margaret's voice carried the calm authority of a boardroom veteran. "Harold, show her." Principal Martinez slid a thick folder across his desk. Dahlia's school photo paper-clipped to the cover. Her full name in bold, Dahlia Johnson, Candidate Assessment. Harold opened it, revealing pages of documentation, academic transcripts, work evaluations from Big Mike, character references from teachers, even photos of her helping neighbors. "We've been researching you for 3 days," Harold explained. "Your grades, your work ethic, your kindness. Your name came up repeatedly as someone who embodies the values we seek." Dahlia's head spun. "You were testing me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Harold's tone was matter-of-fact. The broken-down Mercedes, the lost wallet, it was staged. "We needed to see how you'd act when the choice cost you something real, when no one was watching." Margaret patted her coat pocket. The wallet was here the whole time. The betrayal stung, but before Dahlia could process it, Margaret opened her leather portfolio, revealing documents that stopped her cold university logos, legal letterhead, financial statements with staggering numbers. We're offering you a full scholarship to any accredited university. Harold began his voice like a business pitch. Tuition, room, board, books, living expenses, 4 years fully covered. During summers, you'll intern with our Foundation Learning, Nonprofit Management, Community Development, Social Enterprise. Margaret continued, after graduation, you'll return here as Assistant Director of our newest Community Development Center. After 2 years, if we agree, you'll become Director. Harold spread architectural blueprints across the desk. The title in elegant lettering, the Dahlia Johnson Community Development Center. Dahlia's breath caught. You want to name it after me? Harold clarified. We want you to lead it. This is a $25 million investment in your community, but we don't just write checks. We partner with local leaders who share our vision. The blueprints detailed a gleaming facility on the site of the abandoned Riverside Mall, a medical clinic, computer labs, job, training facilities, a library, a commercial kitchen. Harold traced the plans. First floor, healthcare services routine, care chronic disease management, affordable for all. Second floor, education and job training, computer literacy, GED prep. Vocational certifications. Margaret added, we've studied your area. Roosevelt High's computers are 8 years old. 41% of adults lack digital literacy. The nearest clinic is 12 miles away. This center addresses those gaps. Principal Martinez leaned forward. Dahlia, the economic impact would be transformative. Construction jobs, permanent employment, new businesses. Dahlia studied the documents, her mind grappling with the numbers $15 million for construction, $10 million for operations, serving 3,000 people annually. Her eyes caught the salary figures, $65,000 as assistant director, $90,000 as director, enough to cover Miss Ruby's medical bills, and more. But Margaret's voice turned serious. There's one condition: you can't do this for money or recognition. It has to be about serving your community. Dahlia hesitated. How do you know I won't change? That success won't corrupt me, Harold smiled. Because last night you gave away your meal to strangers, not for gain, but because it was right. Character like that doesn't shift. Principal Martinez nodded. Dahlia, I've watched you for years. You're the same whether you're washing dishes or tutoring, whether you have money or give it away. Harold handed her a business card, heavy cardstock with the gold logo. Take 2 weeks. Visit our centers in Chicago, Atlanta, Denver. Talk to directors who started like you. Make sure this aligns with your vision. Margaret softened. And regardless of your decision, your college tuition is covered. What you did last night deserves that. Dahlia stared at the card, the blueprints, the impossible opportunity. The bell rang and students moved through their ordinary day outside, unaware that Dahlia's future was being rewritten. She thought of Miss Ruby's bills, Roosevelt High's outdated labs, the empty mall that could be so much more. What if I'm not ready? She asked quietly. Margaret's response was gentle but firm. If you fail, you'll fail trying to help your community. That's not failure. That's heroism. Harold added, you won't be alone. You'll have a $200 million foundation behind you. As they left, Harold's parting words echoed, we'll be in touch. Dahlia sat alone in the office, the folder open before her, realizing this wasn't just about her. It was about everyone she'd ever helped. Everyone who believed kindness mattered. The biggest shock was yet to come. This was about proving that good people sometimes really do win. Dahlia Johnson walked out of Principal Martinez's office, clutching Harold Whitmore's business card, its gold logo glinting under the fluorescent lights of Roosevelt High. Her legs felt unsteady, as if the ground itself had shifted beneath her. The hallways buzzed with students changing classes, their chatter and laughter a stark contrast to the gravity of what she'd just heard. A full scholarship, a community center, bearing her name, a $25 million investment in her neighborhood, all sparked by a single act of kindness at Murphy's Diner. She slipped the card into her pocket next to the $3.47 that still wouldn't cover her bus fare home and headed to her next class. But her mind was miles away. The blueprints, the folder with her name, Harold's piercing blue eyes, they swirled in her thoughts, making algebra equations and history dates feel like relics of someone else's life. By lunchtime, Jada cornered her in the library, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Dee, what happened in there? Everyone's talking about you getting called to Martinez's office. You in trouble or something?" Dahlia hesitated, the weight of the morning too raw to share fully. "Not trouble," she said, pulling out the business card. "The couple from last night, they're with the Whitmore Foundation. They're offering me opportunities." Jada's jaw dropped as Dahlia recounted the meeting, her voice low to avoid prying ears. "A community center named after you, Dahlia. That's insane. You're like famous now." Dahlia shook her head. The word famous, feeling wrong. "It's not about that. It's about helping people, Miss Ruby, the neighborhood kids at school." Jada leaned back, skeptical. "Sure, but you're telling me you're not even a little excited about the money? College paid for a big salary?" Dahlia's fingers traced the card's edges. "It's not about the money," she said, echoing Margaret's condition, though the thought of covering Miss Ruby's medical bills made her heart race. After school, Dahlia returned to Murphy's for her evening shift, the diner's fluorescent glow a familiar anchor. Big Mike nodded as she tied on her apron, but Sandy, the waitress, was practically vibrating with excitement. "Dahlia, Pete told me something wild about that couple last night. Their car started right up. No problem. And get this, a driver in a black suit was waiting for them like they had a backup plan all along." Dahlia froze mid-scrub, soapy water dripping from her hands. A driver, Sandy nodded, leaning closer. Pete overheard the old man talking about foundation protocols and candidate assessment. "Oh, what kind of stranded folks talk like that?" The words hit Dahlia like a puzzle piece, snapping into place. The staged car trouble, the lost wallet. Harold's sudden shift to authority, it was all a test. She scrubbed harder, her mind racing. Had they been watching her before last night? How much did they know? The evening rush kept her busy, but every plate she washed felt like a countdown to something bigger. Customers came and went, families celebrating small wins, couples on quiet dates, elderly patrons stretching their meals to fend off loneliness. Dahlia noticed them all, her eyes, catching the small kindnesses that defined the diner, a trucker slipping an extra tip under his plate, a mom sharing her fries with a fussy toddler. These were the moments that made her neighborhood feel alive, the moments she wanted to amplify. When her shift ended, Dahlia faced the 3-mile walk home, the November air sharp against her skin. The route took her past the nice houses with their perfect lawns, Jada's potholed apartment complex, and the abandoned Riverside Mall, its empty lot sprawling under the streetlights. She imagined it, transformed glass walls, a medical clinic, computer labs buzzing with possibility. The thought made her steps lighter, even as her stomach growled. At home, Miss Ruby sat in her recliner oxygen tank, humming softly, the late news flickering on the TV. "You're late, baby," she said, her voice warm but tired. "Everything okay?" Dahlia sat beside her, pulling out the business card. "Grandma, something happened today." She spilled the story, the couple, the test, the scholarship, the community center. Miss Ruby listened, her paper-thin hands gripping Dahlia's. "They were testing your heart," she said, her eyes sharp. "Sometimes angels come disguised as people in need, seeing if you'll do right when it costs you. Dahlia smiled skeptical. They weren't angels, Grandma. Just rich people with the plan. Miss Ruby patted her hand. Maybe so, but you keep that generous heart. It's taking you places. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Dahlia replayed the day. Harold's words. We don't forget kindness echoed alongside Sandy's revelation about the driver and Pete's tow truck. She pulled out her phone, Jada's text glowing in the dark. You're gonna be a big shot, D. Don't forget us, little people. Dahlia typed back. Never. But her mind was on the folder, the blueprints, the weight of being chosen. The next morning, Dahlia woke with a mix of dread and excitement. She took the bus to school, her $3.47 dwindling, and found Mrs. Patterson waiting outside her first period class. Dahlia, the Whitmores called again. They're sending a car to take you to their Chicago Community Center this weekend. They want you to see what they do. Dahlia's heart skipped. A car? Mrs. Patterson nodded, her smile proud. They're serious about you, Dahlia. This is big. The day blurred classes, whispers from classmates, Jada's endless questions, but Dahlia's thoughts were on Chicago. Saturday morning, a sleek black sedan pulled up to Elm Street. Its driver, a polite man in a suit, who opened the door for her. Miss Johnson. I'm with the Whitmore Foundation, he said. The ride felt surreal, the city's skyline looming as they approached a gleaming building in a neighborhood not unlike her own. Inside the Chicago Community Center buzzed with activity, adults in computer classes, kids in tutoring sessions, a medical clinic humming with patients. The director, a woman named Carla, greeted Dahlia warmly. I started where you are, she said, showing Dahlia around. I was 19, working 2 jobs when the Whitmores found me. They saw something I didn't see in myself. Carla pointed to a wall of photos, graduates, new businesses, families reunited. This is what happens when you give people tools, not just handouts. Dahlia spent the day shadowing Carla, asking questions about funding, staffing, community trust. She met a man who'd learned coding and now worked for a tech firm, a grandmother getting her GED, a teenager who'd avoided trouble thanks to the center's youth programs. Every story felt like a mirror of her neighborhood's needs. That evening, back in the sedan, Dahlia clutched a folder Carla had given her case studies impact reports, proof of transformation. She thought of Miss Ruby's oxygen tank, the outdated computers at Roosevelt High, the empty mall. Could she really lead something this big? Sunday, she visited the Whitmore's Atlanta Center, then Denver, each one reinforcing the same truth. Real change came from local leaders backed by resources. By the time she returned home, her doubt was giving way to determination. Miss Ruby noticed the change. You look different, baby, she said, her eyes twinkling. Like you're seeing what's possible. Dahlia nodded, the business card still in her pocket. I think I am. 2 weeks after the diner encounter, Dahlia sat in Principal Martinez's office again, Harold and Margaret across from her, their presence less intimidating but no less commanding. Have you decided? Harold asked, his blue eyes steady. Dahlia took a breath, thinking of Miss Ruby, Jada, the kids she tutored, the mall. That could be more. I'm in, she said, her voice firm. Not for the money, but for my community. Margaret smiled, sliding the contract across the desk. We knew you'd say that. The documents outlined everything, the scholarship, the internships, the assistant director role, the path to leading the Dahlia Johnson Community Development Center. Harold pointed to the blueprints. Construction starts in 6 months. You'll help shape every detail while you study nonprofit management. Dahlia signed, her hand steady despite the weight of the moment. As the Whitmores left, Harold's parting words lingered. You're not just building a center, Dahlia. You're building a legacy. That night, Dahlia walked to Murphy's her shift, a grounding ritual. Sandy grinned as she tied on her apron. "Heard you're gonna be a big deal, Dahlia." Big Mike, usually gruff, slid a slice of apple pie her way. "On the house," he said. "You're making us proud." As she scrubbed plates, Dahlia looked out the small window, imagining the mall transformed her neighborhood thriving. She thought of the couple at table 6, their test that wasn't just a test, but a door to something bigger. Somewhere, Harold was on his phone finalizing plans, while Margaret reviewed budgets for the center. Dahlia didn't know it yet, but her choice had already set ripples in motion. Jobs created lives, changed, hope restored. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered, and for the first time Dahlia saw her reflection not as a dishwasher or a student, but as a leader whose kindness could rewrite her community's story. Dahlia Johnson's life had taken on a new rhythm since signing the contract with the Whitmore Foundation. The weight of her decision to lead a $25 million community development center, bearing her name, settled into her daily routine like a quiet promise. Each morning she woke at 5:30 a.m., her body still tethered to the discipline of survival, and tiptoed past Miss Ruby's room, where the oxygen tank's hum was softer now, thanks to better-managed care funded by Dahlia's early stipend from the foundation. The Elm Street house, with its sagging porch and duct-taped windows, felt less like a burden and more like a starting point. Dahlia slipped into her worn jeans, her pocket now holding a few extra dollars from the foundation's travel allowance, though she still walked the 3 miles to Murphy's Diner most evenings, saving her money for Miss Ruby's needs. The walk took her through the familiar tapestry of her town, the pristine lawns of wealthier neighborhoods, Jada's potholed apartment complex, and the abandoned Riverside Mall. Its empty lot now alive in her mind, with the blueprints of a future community center. At Murphy's, Big Mike's nod carried a new layer of respect, and Sandy's chatter was laced with excitement about Dahlia's big-shot future. But as Dahlia scrubbed plates, stack, wash, rinse, dry, her thoughts were on the journey ahead, college internships, and the responsibility of leading a transformation she could barely fathom. School at Roosevelt High felt different now. The outdated computers and broken lockers were no longer just obstacles, but reminders of what she was working to change. During lunch, Dahlia pored over nonprofit management books sent by the Whitmores, her peanut butter sandwiches replaced by meals from the diner's kitchen, courtesy of Big Mike's quiet generosity. Mrs. Patterson, her English teacher, became a mentor, slipping her articles on community development and leadership. "You're not just a student anymore, Dahlia," she said one afternoon. "You're a visionary." The word felt too big, but Dahlia clung to it, letting it fuel her late-night study sessions. Jada, ever the skeptic, teased her relentlessly. "You're going to be running board meetings while I'm still sneaking fries at Murphy's," she said, but her grin betrayed pride. Dahlia's visits to the Whitmore Foundation's centers in Chicago, Atlanta, and Denver had opened her eyes to what was possible. Medical clinics saving lives, computer labs launching careers, youth programs keeping kids off the streets. Each director she met shared stories of their own unlikely beginnings, reinforcing Harold's words. "You have the ability to see what could be, not just what is." Back home, Dahlia began sketching ideas for the Dahlia Johnson Community Development Center, imagining a medical clinic for Miss Ruby's neighbor's job training for Jada's mom, a library where kids like her could dream bigger. The Whitmores kept in touch, their calls precise and purposeful. Harold sent detailed emails about construction timelines, while Margaret shared case studies on sustainable community programs. They invited Dahlia to a planning session at their headquarters, a sleek office in a nearby city that felt like stepping into another world. Glass walls, polished floors, and staff in sharp suits contrasted with the worn booths of Murphy's, But Dahlia held her own, asking questions about funding models and community engagement. Harold's blue eyes sparkled with approval. "You're a quick study, Dahlia," he said, handing her a binder of architectural plans. The Riverside Mall site would be cleared in 3 months, with construction starting soon after. The blueprints detailed a state-of-the-art facility, a first-floor medical clinic with affordable care, a second-floor education wing with computer labs and vocational training, a library with study spaces, and a commercial kitchen for community meals and job programs. "This is your vision as much as ours," Margaret said, pointing to the elegant lettering on the facade, "The Dahlia Johnson Community Development Center." Dahlia's throat tightened. "It still doesn't feel real," she admitted. Harold's smile was steady. "It will when you see it built." Back at Roosevelt High, word of Dahlia's opportunity spread, turning her into a quiet celebrity. Classmates she barely knew asked about the center, while teachers like Mrs. Patterson beamed with pride. Principal Martinez called her into his office one afternoon, his desk covered with foundation paperwork. Dahlia, the Whitmores, sent over a community advisory board proposal. They want local input to ensure the center meets real needs. They're asking for your recommendations. Dahlia spent evenings compiling names: Mrs. Carter, who ran the corner store; Mr. Ellis, the librarian who had seen her tutor kids; even Big Mike, whose diner was a hub of community life. She presented the list to Harold during a video call, her voice steady despite her nerves. "These are people who know what our neighborhood needs," she said. Harold nodded, scribbling notes. "You're already thinking like a director." The responsibility felt heavy, but Dahlia leaned into it, spending her weekends at the library researching grant writing and program development, her dreams growing sharper with every page. At home, Miss Ruby noticed the change. "You're carrying yourself different, baby," she said one evening, her recliner creaking as she adjusted her oxygen tube, "like you know where you're going." Dahlia knelt beside her, sharing sketches of the center. "Grandma, this could mean a clinic nearby, jobs for people, a place for kids to study." Miss Ruby's eyes glistened. "You're doing what I always prayed for, lifting up the folks around you." But doubt crept in at night when Dahlia lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. What if she wasn't ready? What if she let her community down? The scholarship covered College State University, where she'd start next fall studying nonprofit management, but leading a $25 million project felt like a leap into the unknown. She texted Jada, "What if I mess this up?" Jada's reply was instant. "You gave away your dinner to strangers, D. You're not messing this up." The words grounded her, reminding her why the Whitmores chose her not for perfection, but for her heart. Construction began sooner than expected. One crisp morning, Dahlia stood at the Riverside Mall site watching bulldozers clear debris. Harold and Margaret were there, their presence drawing local news crews. "This is the future of community development," Harold told a reporter, gesturing to Dahlia. "A local leader with vision and compassion." Dahlia blushed, unaccustomed to the spotlight, but she answered questions about her hopes for the center healthcare access job, training, a place where people could thrive. The community buzzed with excitement. Neighbors stopped her on the street, asking about jobs or clinic services. Mrs. Carter offered to stock supplies for the center's store, while Mr. Ellis volunteered to run literacy programs. Even Big Mike, gruff as ever, promised to train culinary students in the commercial kitchen. Dahlia's evenings at Murphy's became brainstorming sessions with Sandy and customers tossing out ideas for community events. You're gonna make this place something special," Sandy said, sliding her a free milkshake. Dahlia smiled, but the pressure was real. Every decision, from program priorities to hiring, would shape lives. One evening, as Dahlia scrubbed plates, a familiar scene unfolded at table 6. A young family, parents and 2 kids, sat huddled, their clothes worn, their voices low. The mother counted change with shaking hands, apologizing to Sandy for a bill they couldn't cover. Their car had broken down, they said, and their last dollars went to a tow. Dahlia's heart tugged, echoing that night with Harold and Margaret. Without hesitation, she grabbed 2 meals from the counter and approached their table. "Folks, this one's on me," she said, setting down plates of burgers and fries. The parents' eyes filled with gratitude, and Dahlia sat with them, learning their story. Miguel and Rosa, new to town, seeking work, but lacking connections. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "the community center's hiring soon. Can't promise anything, but come by tomorrow." She wrote their names on a napkin, just as Harold had done for her, and handed them a card with the center's temporary office address. That night, she called Carla, the Chicago director, for advice on integrating newcomers into job programs. "You're already leading," Carla said, her voice warm. As Dahlia walked home, the stars bright above Elm Street, she felt the weight of her choice, not just to accept the Whitmore's offer, but to keep choosing kindness every day. The center's foundation was being poured, but Dahlia was building something deeper: trust, hope, possibility. At home, Miss Ruby waited, her health improving with regular clinic visits funded by the foundation. "You're making me proud, baby," she said, her voice stronger. Dahlia showed her a photo of the construction site, the sign already up, the Dahlia Johnson Community Development Center. "It's not just my name, Grandma," she said. "It's for all of us." Lying in bed, Dahlia thought of Miguel and Rosa, of the kids she tutored, of the neighbors who believed in her. The Whitmores had given her tools, but the vision was hers. Harold's words echoed, "You're building a legacy." For the first time, Dahlia believed it, not just for herself, but for every life she'd touch, one act of kindness at a time.